started with a poll question. And what is the longest standing committee at Penn State? I'll give you a few seconds to fill that in. And Sarah, can we have the results? And yay, most people knew that it is the UCIF committee. It is the University Committee for Instructional Facilities. And what's exciting about this is that for well over 25 years, this committee has been in place, but the more exciting part is that over the last few years, the committee has been reimagined, and now is the Learning Spaces Leadership Committee. So our goals for today are going to be to briefly describe those roles of the Learning Spaces Leadership Committee, discuss the proposal process and some of the results from those, and share some of those results of the new spaces. We're going to hear from a faculty member about flexible learning environments, talk about some of the resources that are available to you and how you can get involved at your campus or on a committee. So our next poll question, if you had the opportunity, could you see yourself teaching in a space like one of these? And the results? %90 said yes. Exciting. So let's talk about how we can get to some of these spaces or something very similar. So the Learning Spaces Leadership Committee collaborates with faculty and students, researchers to improve and expand our 21st century learning spaces that drive digital innovation and transform education across the Commonwealth. So here I have listed the committees that make up the Learning Spaces Leadership Committee. For faculty who are participating today, how you can get involved. We have faculty participating on the academic subcommittee, as well as this year we're excited to have 2 faculty from our Commonwealth campuses that are part of the executive committee. Those faculty will remain on that committee for at least 2 years, and then they'll be selected, we'll select new faculty after those first 2 years. So the excitement about that is having so many people involved and looking at our spaces. So we are also going to hear from one of those members that is on the faculty or on the executive committee as a faculty member later in the presentation. Each year, the Learning Spaces Leadership Committee supports the campuses with an RFP process, which each campus is able to submit up to 2 proposals. Those proposals are funded with a 50-50 match between the campuses, and funding is available from the LSLC. With that funding that's available, the committee is able to award approximately 12 to 15 proposals each year. Through this key criteria selection that I have up, the awards along with a scoring rubric, that's how they're awarded in that 12 to 15 proposals each year. One thing that I want you to take note of here is at the bottom of this is the link to the Learning Spaces rating system, which is used as a baseline along with some other tools for us to design future spaces. And Sarah, could you or Tim add that to the chat, please? And then people can explore the Learning Spaces rating system. This is the rubric that I just mentioned. While I don't expect for you to be able to read this, I wanted you to see that there is a scoring rubric. So why this is important for people to know is that that key criteria, which is actually listed in the first column here, and also from the previous slide, that along with this rubric are the guidelines that show what makes up that poor to excellent proposal. So the descriptors are there left to right in the 2nd through the 4th column with points associated with each descriptor and how to get from that poor to excellent. To give you an idea of what the proposal process looks like from start to finish in an academic year, Here I've provided you what this year's guidelines looked like as far as our timeline. But of course, due to COVID-19 and our situation that we're all in globally here, and like with many things, we've had to adjust to accommodate folks working on their campuses and or even being able to get to campus and then back into this summer. So some of these things have shifted, and while some of those earlier deadlines have shifted slightly, we're trying to keep that November 2020 deadline at this time. One key criteria here that you want to just take note of is that there is a pre-proposal survey that goes out, and that's the beginning of the process. So we're going to jump into a little story here and go through this a little bit, but I'm going to try to give you a little bit of time at the end for Q&A. And well, we're working with all of our campuses, and all campuses do a wonderful job at these proposals. This particular story with Wilkes-Barre really hits the mark on every step when we look at those key criteria selections and the rubric. So Wilkes-Barre and their team had submitted their pre-survey information. And we had some conversations in Zoom about the space that was selected, and we've reached out. We had a few more Zoom conversations. And then I went to campus and presented on the LSLC and the RFP process. And while there, I met with all campus leadership and some faculty that were there, and we discussed their room proposals, toured some rooms, and came to the conclusion that the room that they had submitted really wasn't the best candidate at that time, just because it was limited to one discipline and wasn't really meeting all of the key criteria. So after the tour, we settled on a different room, and this is the room that they settled on to use in their proposal and redesign. So as you can see, it's a typical standard classroom. We discussed the courses being taught in the space, options, and the impact this particular room could have on campus, and how this room can is directly next to a main corridor at the bottom of staircase. What you can't see in this picture is if you follow the wall from the podium down, that particular wall is filled with windows into the corridor. That corridor is very heavily trafficked. There's between faculty and students all day long in that corridor. So here, I want to pull up another poll question. And so when you're teaching in spaces like this, what in the classroom makes you feel constrained while teaching? And if the answer isn't on here, we have the other. If you can just drop your answers in the chat, we can review those later if there's something else that's making you feel a little constrained. And Sarah, can you pop up the answers? All of the above, 62%. Exciting. Okay. So remember this picture. This is the classroom that they did a redesign on. And this is the classroom now. This is the finished location in the Bell Atlantic building, room 24, and it opened spring of 2020. Now let's think back to that key criteria that we discussed earlier in what makes a good proposal. As you can see here from the pictures, there's a great opportunity here for effective and evidence-based teaching and learning in this space. Student engagement in learning activities across a variety of disciplines. So in this space, courses being taught, there are 9 courses this semester, well, what was spring semester, with 6 unique faculty, and they're covering all levels of courses from 100 to 400 level courses in this space. So the impact on significant proportions of students, while they were able to keep this room and continue to keep this room to supporting all disciplines and remaining discipline agnostic, they're utilizing this space well because they're covering multiple disciplines in the space and accessing it from all levels. So room reconfiguration on different needs in teaching and learning. So you can see here that the furniture is flexible and easy to change around for many different layouts for all students and then for few students as well. And use of modern technology in seamless and appropriate ways. Throughout this room, there are short throw projectors, which is allowing for multiple sight lines around the room, as well as immersive solstices in the room for wireless content sharing. So instructional innovation and experimentation goes a long way in this room. So there's a lot of room here as faculty members to be very innovative in their teaching practices and then experimenting in different ways around the room. Ongoing adjustments and changing pedagogies. This was exciting for us as well as for the campus. The local instructional design person had reached out to us and we paired them up with the teaching and learning instructional design team, where they were able to create 3 workshops to make available for the faculty who are going to be teaching in this space. 2 of those workshops happened prior to this room even being completed. So those 2 workshops were an introduction to active learning and then using active learning spaces. And then the 3rd one was done after the space was built. And that was a getting comfortable with the space and doing a true walkthrough of all of the technology. So through this faculty and staff collaboration, we're able to join together and discuss these projects and provide guidance based on research outcomes from our experimental research classrooms that are at University Park. Other TLT partners, as you heard me talk about here, were our TLT instructional design teams came into this process, and it's so important that they were able to team up with the campus. If you have instructional designers at your campus or another need where our TLT instructional design team can help out and take the opportunity to collaborate with that team, there are resources on a variety of activities for workshops that we can provide for faculty development and prepare to teach in new types of spaces and environments like this. The TLT teams are available to all campuses for learning space design, faculty programs, instructional design, media commons, and so much more. So the experimental research classrooms at University Park and the research outcomes really help us to make sound recommendations for future space designs across the state in all of our campuses. So let's take a look at some of those spaces and some of those outcomes that have happened through this process. And to get started, I really want to show you where this comes from. When we talk about our experimental research classrooms, and on the left, you're going to see the Alt House 101 space, which is our original Bluebox that opened in 2016. On the right is our second experimental space, which is AgSci 110. And on the left, we have writable surfaces around the space. On the right, we took what we learned from the original space and we expanded on that from our research, and what we had learned in the original Bluebox was to expand what was our knowledge and what do we need to learn about writable surfaces. And so on the right side in that ASI space, we have writable surfaces on the tables, which are height adjustable flip top nesting tables, which could then go into being a mobile whiteboard of sorts then. So if you are faculty from University Park and you might be interested in teaching in one of these 2 types of spaces, let us know. We need people to be teaching in these spaces, and that helps us to learn and inform future designs. So let's take a look here. We're going to jump into some flexible spaces here. Sarah, can you tell me, is that showing up on showing you Old Main in the 360 view?
No, we're still just seeing your PowerPoint.
Okay, let me see. I need to stop sharing this one. We'll throw this up at another time, but I do want you to see eventually some of those other spaces around the community. But let's go ahead and move on. So in our following those, what do we learn out of all of these spaces and having spaces like this? So we want to have a good understanding about teaching and learning experiences in these spaces. So following 2 semesters of use in those newly renovated spaces, we want to have some feedback from you at campuses as well as those who are teaching in the flexible spaces at University Park. So we're looking to have what are the new and instructional strategies that you might have come up with, the impacts on pedagogy and student learning, and then of course your satisfaction as faculty as well as student satisfaction. So at this point, we're going to jump in and hear from Tiffany McQuarrie. Tiffany is from the Beaver campus, and you may have heard her presentation on the EDGE program a few weeks ago. She is the lead for the EDGE program at Beaver, and this is how flexible spaces have benefited her and her teaching styles. Tiffany McQuarrie and Lisa Morris. Lisa is a faculty member at Abington campus. She's teaching criminal justice there, and both of these are now part of our executive committee for the Learning Spaces Leadership Committee. So let's hear from Tiffany. This takes a second to load.
So I think it's important that all Penn State faculty have access to these TLT learning spaces because, let me put it this way, in every class I teach, I stress to my students the need to focus on the receiver's point of view and to gear communication specifically toward that audience. So as faculty, we must do something similar with our instruction and our course delivery. We must focus our delivery specifically toward Generation Z students and determine the skills necessary for them to be both successful personally and professionally. So skills such as intercultural interaction, project collaboration, distance collaboration, digital skills, all of those can be realized and practiced in a redesigned learning space.
So thank you, Tiffany, if you're on today, thanks so much for that. And these are redesigned spaces for all of Penn State in our general purpose classroom areas. So how do you get involved? So we're going to be wrapping this up. And so for one of our last poll questions, how many of you would be interested in becoming part of the planning process with others at your campuses? And if we could have the results. 85%, great. So how do you get involved? At this time, I have a list of those people on your campus that have been involved in this process for many years, and you can reach out to whoever holds these offices or this position at your campus, or you can reach out to me directly and I can connect you with your campus leadership on who's actually handling the process there. And with that, thank you so much for your time. My information is here if you do need to get in contact with me. And with that, I think I'm out of time, and I'm going to be turning this over to Crystal and welcoming our panelists this morning for Learning Spaces Reimagined.
Thank you, Lori. So good morning, everyone. My name is Crystal Ramsay, and I manage the faculty programs team at TLT. I'm also currently the interim assistant director of TLT Innovation. It's my pleasure to be emceeing this morning's Faculty Fellows panel. Today, our 4